What's going on? It's another episode of Forward Thinking Leaders with Mike and Mike. Let's get into it.
You're alive in us. We're alive in you.
How's it going, OG Mike?
Oh, I'm just so happy to be here. Welcome back, everybody.
We just seems like we just recorded like recently, but it's been a week already.
It's been a week, yeah.
Yeah, we're wearing the exact same thing in the exact same position, but it's been a week.
You know, laundry's on a cycle.
That's right, yeah. So last time we talked about eustress is good stress.
Right.
And today we're going to talk about the opposite, which is distress is bad stress.
Which that's a hard one for me because I'm pretty optimistic guy. I'm pretty positive, so I deal with stress, and I work in the restaurant industry, so it's pretty much stress all day long. So you really have to learn how to kind of put it in your pocket and, you know, deal with it.
So do you think you started that way, or do you think like over time you just learned how to kind of handle it better?
I probably learned how to handle it better over time because, you know, when you're younger, you don't know. You just don't know. You learn as you go, I guess.
You don't know what you don't know?
You don't know what, yeah, exactly.
Isn't that a weird thing?
It really is.
So last time we kind of said, you know, eustress is like that rubber band that you have to stretch it beyond its natural state to use it for its purpose. Now, distress, of course, is when you pull a rubber band so much that, you know, it snaps.
Correct.
Right. Or it like, you've seen rubber bands that are so stretched out that you can't use them anymore.
Right. They're a little wrinkly.
Yeah, a little wrinkly, or they're real brittle if they're old or whatnot. Yeah. So that's the distress. Distress is the bad kind of stress. Distress is the kind of stress that like raises your blood pressure and keeps you awake at night. And, you know, it doesn't really help to propel you in growth, right? But instead, it really has a lot of anxiety,
A lot of
I would
binding.
say. Yeah, a lot of that attached to it. So I'll go ahead and share a story for this one.
All right.
And, you know, it goes back to when we were in the Philippines and we had our son, Josiah, already. And then Andrew and I actually had a miscarriage after that. And we kind of talked about you guys last time with that, which was a little bit different. This one was an early miscarriage. And then, you know, we had already been looking at adoption since we were dating. Like we were going to adopt.
Right.
We didn't know we'd be in the Philippines, but we were going to. And so after that miscarriage, then we went to our social worker and said, hey, you know, we'd like to adopt now. We've been in the country 3 years. And, you know, within an hour, we were at the city hospital looking at our daughter, Eliana.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So it's a beautiful story. I'm sure we're going to share it some other time, as we always say, for another podcast. But in that process, you know, it's really interesting because right as soon as we brought Eliana into our house, things started to happen. And so what happened, one example is like 2 months after we brought her in, we lost our largest donor. And when you're a missionary, you know, especially in the early stages, as time went on, we had a lot more supporters giving smaller amounts, which is great for missionaries because you get it from all different areas.
Right.
But at that time, we had a few people that were giving us big amounts to keep us there. So we lost our biggest donor, and I had no idea it was coming.
Yeah.
And we had just brought Eliana into the house, and you know, I was thinking, I'm going to lose her. And that's what I thought.
Stress.
Yeah, that was distress, you know. And I thought, now I can't afford to stay here, can't afford to do the adoption, can't afford to this and that, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I that was the only panic attack or anxiety attack I've ever had in my life where I literally like dropped to the ground and my chest felt like it was, you know, thumping. My heart felt like it was going to pull out of his chest, and it just got tight. And I was sitting there on the ground and I was just kind of breaking, you know. And at the end of that time, though, however long it was, I don't even know. But the peace of God just came on me. And I realized, you know what, God, you've kept us here for this many years. And you brought Eliana into our home, and so you're going to provide.
Isn't it amazing when you can just let everything go and understand that God has you in His hands?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard to really get to that point sometimes, but
it would have been if I would have kept it that way. That would have been great.
Absolutely.
But over the next 7-8 years, there were pockets of time where that anxiety and that distress would come back to me. There were pockets of time when I wasn't sure because we adopted in a time in the Philippines when not only the social services had to sign off on you, but the court also had to sign off on you. So
I remember the struggle. I remember the journey.
You're right, yeah. So this is almost like a 7.5 year journey to get her adopted. 7.5 years that, like Andrew and I, we did not leave the Philippines at the same time because one of us was always with her. And
like
she
you got
travel.
close so many times and it got pulled away from you, right? I mean, it was just,
like,
I can't even imagine that kind of stress for real.
Yeah. So the court dates were like 3 or 4 months out. And so we showed up one morning for court and the clerk came out. It's like, I'm sorry, the judge had to have teeth pulled in emergency, and so 4 months, we'll get you another appointment in 4 months. Yeah, that's how it was. And literally one time we showed up, and the prosecutor had a vacation planned. 4 months, we had to wait 4 more months,
Oh,
and
man.
so it was crazy, but there were pockets of time when it became distress to me. And
Now, did those pockets of time get easier or shorter? Maybe longer in length in between times?
Yeah, I would say they did. Yeah,
Okay.
and they would usually coordinate with something else going wrong.
Yeah.
So if we were having kind of like financial lows, that would be the time when the adoption and the stress of everything would kind of add to it, or when I was having leadership problems, or when I was going through personal things or whatever it was, it would kind of couple together, and it would be something that because I'm not a controlling person, but I don't like when things are out of my control, right? You know what I'm saying? I had no say over what the judge was going to say or do, right? I had that was out of my hands completely. And so things like that, where it's like I can't even do anything to work towards it.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, it is very
And
hard.
I had nights where I couldn't sleep, and I'm not really proud to say this, but this is just my journey. I had times when, I could feel my blood pressure just going through the roof and different things that happened. One time, Andrew and I went to donate blood in the Philippines, and they took my blood pressure, and they're like, no, no, sir. And it was just so high, which is not normal for me. But it was just during one of those times when all of the pressures and everything kind of came together at once. And that distress, man, without God, going back to the last podcast about eustress, right? Without God and without Andrea, who, we may be up and down at times, but we're always together.
Yeah.
Our commitment to each other has been obviously what's kept us together so well with such a bond, and everything we've been through. But
And
without
sometimes
that,
going through those things will bring you together a little bit more too. You know what I mean?
yeah, right, yeah, kind of refined in the fire,
Yeah.
right. But those things are what helped us to get through it. But without that, there were times when I easily could have, snapped in a way, either in my personality or with my anger or things like that. It would have been easy because there were times when that distress was just too much.
It so brings out your humanness, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Man.
yeah,
So for me, I don't really have that deep of a story. I was notorious I work in the restaurant business, as you all have heard me say before, and I was very notorious for every 2 years I would quit, get a job somewhere else. Of course, I'd always make sure there was a little financial gain along with it, and that was my reasoning to do it. Even if that wasn't the true reason, that's how I justified it.
sure.
And then I just got to the point where I was like, all right, God, I'm really tired of jumping from job to job. I'm getting nowhere in my life for real. I talked to one of our congregants here, your brother, and he gave me some really great
Shout
advice.
out, David.
Yeah, David Erickson. And I ended up working for Panera, and I've stuck with it I'm going to my 5th year right now.
Wow.
And I am in a financial situation that I've never been in before, and it's a positive one. So it just took me listening to God to say, I need you to stay here. And there was a time in Panera I was ready to go. And God said, nope, you're going to sit. You're going to wait. And I'm glad I did because I've never been in this position in my life. So.
And didn't you say recently you were able to meet with some of the higher ups in the company?
Yeah, I actually got to do a roundtable with the president of the company, Nurin, last Thursday. And then Wednesday, the vice president is actually coming to my store.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
yeah,
cool, but
yeah.
it's stressful.
Yeah, that's right. But through our talks, you turn it into eustress, right?
That's
No.
correct. That's correct.
No, but imagine, that I would say in general, people who don't stay there for a more tenured time don't have the same opportunities.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just how it goes. The longer you're at somewhere, the more people get to know you, the more skin in the game you have,
Right.
or the more tenured you are, the more your opinion reaches higher levels because of the trust that's built through time. So, if you had given into the distress, you kind of quickly mentioned that you had thought about leaving even Panera.
I was ready to go, and I prayed about it because I had never done that in my previous jobs. I just quit, and God said, no, I need you to stay here. I've got things for you. So.
Wow. And I would say, man, there it is. So let's break it down this way. So one of the differences between distress and eustress, one of them is prayer.
Right.
And one of them is just being able to stick it out and to see what growth opportunity could be there.
Right.
But I think it turns into distress whenever it becomes attached to anxiety, when it becomes attached to worry.
Fear.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, right? Fear is an extension of belief, right? When we're afraid of something, we're extending a belief that something undesirable is going to happen. So, yeah, that's what turns it into eustress. So a lot of the situations that we face in life, I think we kind of have the option to veer off one way or the other, and it's a tough thing. But that brings together the verse that we have for today, and it's Matthew 6:34. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. I'm going to say it again. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today is trouble enough for today. And I think that distress comes when we kind of start worrying about tomorrow, so to speak.
Absolutely. And again, you don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. You don't even know if you're going to get through today. So why worry about tomorrow, right?
Yeah, that's true. Don't give it 2 weeks notice. I can't think 2 weeks out.
That's right.
No, I'm just kidding.
I like that one.
So before we close this out on distress, I mean, do you have any other comments or something you want to add?
All I can say is if you get into a situation where you're feeling that stress come, just stop and pray about it.
Yeah. Pray. And as we said last time, have a good or trusted friend or husband or wife, whatever the case may be, someone that you can talk to. Yeah.
And don't be scared to talk.
Yeah. And the hard thing about talking then is listening.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of like that. I'll talk very easily about things, but if I've already made it my mind, when the listening times come, it might just really be in one ear and out the other.
My wife does not allow me to do that. So
yeah, mine either. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, same for me. When they talk about stress, eustress or distress, it's about trusting God, trusting that all things come together for those who serve Him and for His will. It's about trusting the people who around us, like you said, our church community or our physical community around us in our neighborhood, right? Which is kind of a lost art, right?
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a shame.
And our
no more block parties. Or
that's
stuff
right.
Like that,
Yeah. And our friendship community and things like that. So just having kind of that group that we can share and bounce ideas off, and kind of, as the word says, iron sharpening iron. And then, if it gets to the point where we're staying awake at night and it's got this anxiety attached, something's wrong.
Yeah.
We got to find a way to give it to God. We got to find a way to release that pressure and to trust that tomorrow has enough problems of its own.
Right.
So, Lord, thank you for today.
Thank you for today.
Yeah. Well, as always, this is Mike and Mike, and hope you enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully next time Benjamin J. Jones will be back with us.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, we always use his music. You can find him on Spotify, different platforms. Benjamin J. Jones.
Great brother.
Yeah, and actually, the more I listen to his music, the one we used was my favorite, but I think I'm gonna switch it out here in a few weeks.
Oh, nice.
Change it up, because now I listen to his other songs. I'm like, oh, that one's kind of nice too.
It doesn't hurt to change it up every once in a while, right?
Hey, we're glad you joined us. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you next time. Until then, stay alive in Him.
Come on back.
We're alive in you.